All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining here on this Open Security Summit. It's our first in-person session since 2019. So today is in person and the whole week it was online. So we really appreciate you joining us here and having a little chat with us. We're going to try and make it interactive and, give you all a chance to ask questions and comments. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about mentoring and in cybersecurity and, the challenges of mentoring and being mentored as well. So have you started the recording? Yeah. So to kick off, I'm going to ask all my candidates to introduce themselves, please.
So I'm Dinis Cruz. I am the CISO of Holland & Barrett, and I'm the chief scientist of Glasswall.
I'm Marius Clark. I'm the CISO of Job and Talent.
I'm Manos Skalidis. I'm the head of information security for Java. That's how I got my space in the panel.
Hi, I'm Mario Platt. I'm CISO at a boutique consulting company called Broadlight Global, and I perform interim and fractional CISO roles for some of our consulting clients.
James Bohr, and I run what is probably the oldest family-run security consultancy in the world, as far as we can tell.
And I'm Petra, I'm your moderator, and I'm a senior security engineer in Job and Talent. So I want to kick off with, a question that kind of relates to going back to how do you even begin, to find a mentor, especially if you're in uni or you just want to switch your career to cybersecurity. I want to ask James, from his experience, what do you think would be, the best way for someone who's entry level, who's just starting, doesn't know anyone, how do they find a mentor?
Ask.
Yeah, can I answer that? Who here is okay to be a mentor? Raise their arms. Right? So the ones who want a mentor, ask. See, they're here, right?
I'd add, ask the ones who don't know they want to mentor, because it's not that you have to go and say, will you please be my mentor? You can go and say, do you have 5 minutes just to give me some advice, answer some questions for me? The vast majority of people I have encountered over some time in cybersecurity have been more than willing at any point to help anyone they can. So ask, don't necessarily ask, can we get a formal mentor relationship going? Just ask, do you mind if I ask some questions? And then a month later or a week later, hey, I've got this new question. I really appreciated your advice last time. We all know about social engineering, flattery works. So I really appreciated your advice. Can you help again? It doesn't have to be a formal, we meet on a schedule, we do it this way relationship. That's more like coaching or possibly corporate mentorship where you've got someone assigned to you. But most of it happens informally with people just having friendly meetups, talking over coffee with each other. So yeah, ask, introduce yourself to someone, say, I'd like to get to where you are. Can you give me some advice based on where I am? And don't just think you can only have one mentor. You can have as many as you've got time to message. And you can mentor people while you've got mentors. If there's people a couple of steps below, reach out and say to them, hey, you seem to be, I saw your post, you're having some trouble with this. Can I give you some advice?
Anyone else of you guys has a comment on this?
So I completely agree with what James was saying, particularly in kind of the world right now where maybe some of the people that you really look up to, maybe they have a blog, they write things on a regular basis, engage with their content, right? Share their content, ask questions on their content. I've had something really interesting happening to me. So one of my kind of security kind of heroes on the planet is Phil Venables, right? He's been the top security person in my own view for years and years. Right? I actually got to meet him 3 weeks ago when I was at RSA. And one of the things that he told me was, look, it's the first time we're meeting, but it feels like we've known each other for years, right? Because I engage with his content. I write blogs, I reference his stuff. It's all of those things. I didn't ask him to be my mentor, but he does know it, but he's been for a very, very long time, right? Because I engage with the content. I really try and understand what he talks about decisions and career paths and the things that went through. I share, engage. That's usually enough if there's someone that you look up to obviously, it's probably not going to be in a week, but if you're consistent with the number of people that you really look up to, I'm sure that after a few months or whatever, when you try and engage them in a way, can I ask this question? Can I, something a bit more pointed, that you can be a bit more specific about something that you'd like to take out of that? 9 times out of 10, I don't think you'll get someone saying, no, I can't do it. Or if you try to say, look, in 3 weeks' time, could we have, instead of, can we do it kind of in the next 30 minutes? That's probably not going to work for most, but 3 weeks down the line, 4 weeks down the line, could you have 30 minutes for us to have a conversation? And I think that type of, not only do you not restrict yourself of thinking that there's one mentor and you only speak to that one, but at different stages of your career, different types of skill sets that you're trying to acquire, you can be more targeted on getting the advice from people that you think are good at something that you want to get better at.
Well, look, social engineer your way into mentoring, right? It's that simple, right? Basically find the people that you like, ask them questions, like James was saying, like, most of us are geeks about this. Like if you ask about things that the person care about, they'll find the time for you. And I guess the other thing is that you should be working for people that are your mentors. It doesn't necessarily mean maybe the one that you report to or something like that, but you should have people in your organizations that are mentoring you, even if they don't know about it, because you have access to them. You can do exactly what we were saying, even without a formal relationship. So I found out some of the best mentors I had worked for the companies I was working for. And, and that's very valuable because you have access to their time, you can piggyback them. And I hope that I'm a good mentor for my teams, right? And, sometimes I drive them crazy because I give them directions or give them stuff. But again, that's how you mentor, right? You mentor by giving directions, by nudging, by being creative and helping somebody in a career. But like I said here, how many people already in this room are willing to be a mentor? Just ask around. And also go outside security, right? Like, some of your best mentors might not be in the security space. It is, cool.
For me, the interesting part is here. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? What do we consider mentorship, actually? Because we're saying that you can approach anyone to be a mentor and everything, but the expectation of what a mentor to you is wide. It's from doing your job to actually just being an advice person or pointing you to the right direction. So we need to make sure that we don't think that mentors are there to do your job for you, right? They're not there to, they're there to guide you. They're there to point you in the right direction.
I was going to let you finish, but there's a big difference, and people often get confused between mentorship and coaching. So coaching is about giving you the answers and giving you instruction to get to a particular place. It's very definite, it's very concrete. You go in with a goal and a coach should help you get there. Mentorship is more about asking questions and sharing experience. So a mentor often won't tell you, yes, I think you should fill in this form and do those 5 steps. They will ask you what you're trying to do and then ask you questions about things you've tried, share stuff from their own experience, but it's usually shouldn't be as directive as coaching. It's much more open, much more informal, much more about letting you explore your own path with the benefit of someone who's already tripped over the same obstacles.
That's exactly, it's more of a discussion, right? This is how I approached it when I ran into those issues. This is what I would do in your situation, but ultimately you're there to do the wrong thing. We don't tell you do those 10 things because we are right. It's more of an open discussion. And I really think that a lot of people that want to be mentored, the approach is, can you show me how to do this? And that's never the right approach. None of us have ultimately infinite time. So when we do get questions like that, we might answer them, but we're not going to always have the time to answer those kind of questions. We're more there for discussion.
Yeah, look, some of the best mentors, you don't need to know them personally, right? I'll tell you, look, I think Kevin Kelly is a mentor for me. Some of the books he published from, the Inevitable and others, right? And New Rules for the New Economy, right? they're amazing, right? They're amazing authors, right? I learned from it. I would say Simon Wardley has been a great mentor for me. And I actually had the privilege to meet him, and then we brought him to a couple of summits. And I never reached him and said, hey, can you mentor me? But I geeked on his materials. I read what he published. I saw his videos. I was able to ask those questions like I actually created sessions to attract Simon Wardley. This is funny because it's been recorded, but I did it in the past, right? I created sessions that attracted some of the people that I wanted to learn from. And then guess what? He came, he had a great time. I learned a lot. So, it works at all sorts of levels. So be proactive, like there's an amazing talent out there. There's amazing people out there. And I completely agree, in Mario, like if you think that you're going to get pulled from your mentor, that's the wrong relationship. Like the more you invest on it, the more you get out. If you ask me a question about graphs, I have time for you, right? If you want to talk about maps, I find the time. If you ask generic questions and other things, I might have time, I might not have time, right? My inbox has a 2-day sort of time span, right? So after 2 days, it goes into a weird hole, right? So, and again, don't be afraid to send the email again, right? Ask again, that's okay. Unless somebody tells you, stop bugging me, right? Like, I don't mind if you email me 5 times, right? It's fine, right? It just goes to the top of the pile and I go, oh, cool, I should reply to this, right? But be proactive. Like the more clever, the more focused you ask the question, the better it works. And I actually learned this in music. Like I was a professional musician. I didn't finish my degree. I was doing computer systems in Portugal, and I left, became a rock drummer in England, right? And I told my teacher I'm leaving because I stopped learning, right? So that was my metric, and I wanted to be a rock drummer. But I've learned that again, not only are the drummers are great mentors, but I would go to the people that I would see a show, and I would ask questions, but I would ask intelligent questions. I wouldn't tell them you played amazing tonight. I would ask, how do you do this? What about this? What about that? And they would have the time to explain to you. And you could always take another level. Well, at least, and sometimes find a way to be professionally engaged with somebody that you want to learn from, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So if you can squeeze that in.
And it's a good channel to get some honest feedback, to be honest, because like you have a channel to discuss things, what you've done, how you approach things. They're going to always come back to you and say, something that's a good way of approaching it, but have you ever considered doing it that way? Or maybe that was a wrong call, that you didn't approach that incident correctly. You would have done this in a better way. And it makes you think how you react. And it's a way for you to vent sometimes as well. You just like, you have all these problems.
And look, the best way to learn is to teach, right? So if it's actually an interesting thing. Like you can add a lot of value to the person you're asking mentorship from, right? Because you can ask them good questions and they go, ooh, okay, that's interesting. I'll geek on that one. Or you might find that a lot of people don't ask him those questions. Like sometimes what's interesting is that it's very lonely when you're an expert in an area because you don't spend enough time talking about the stuff you really care about. That's why I think this summit is so cool, because we find those other 5 or 10 geeks around the world or London who actually want to talk about this, right? So, go and ask a question about something that the people is clearly passionate about, and they'll give you a lot of time.
And like James said at the beginning, like it's fine to have even like a few mentors. Like someone can mentor you a lot from the soft skills perspective. Someone can mentor you a lot from the technical perspective. It's always good to diversify the approach. So going to my second question, Dinis, what you said already a little bit, but if you want to expand, what is it in for the mentor and what's in it for the mentee? Like, how do you sell mentoring to the mentor, and how do you sell mentoring to someone who's going to get mentored?
Well, I think, mentor is something that everybody should do, right? I think it's very good. It makes you better. It makes you think, you evolve. I hope that most of us have a soft spot for our younger version, right? I think most of us remember who we were, right? And, if you get the questions that we can imagine, that's the sweet spot, right? If you can make somebody remind themselves or their early version, they will have a lot of time for you because, they remember what it is. So I think there's a lot of value for it. Maybe some people don't like it, that's fine, but, but I think for a lot of individuals, it's very healthy to do that. But you need to find a way to scale. You need to find a way that you can do mentorship in a way that feeds to you. So I actually, sometimes I share things, and I hope that's one way for me to contribute, right? I tend to default to share a lot of stuff, and I hope that that helps a bit. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of stuff for the mentor, and I think for the mentee, right? I think it's a great opportunity to learn, right? It's a great opportunity to gain better references and to understand how he goes. And to be honest, like the difference between, you know, somebody who wants to be a mentee and not is already massive, right? So there's one guy here, like, you know, he's on a master's degree. I was telling him he's already better than everybody else on his degree, right? Because he's here and the others are not. So the fact that you go out of your way and you ask to be a mentee, right, to somebody, that already puts you at a very special club. Because I'm telling you, like, my inbox is not full of mentee requests, right? Mentorship requests. Maybe if it was, I would sell something different, but I don't give, you know, I don't know, none of us are rejecting people left, right, and center, right? So come on, the market is not overcrowded at the moment. So the opportunity is there. And, you know, like Monty Python, right? He says you go from nothing, you get there and you go to nothing, right? If you know, don't try it, you know, what's wrong with having 5 no's, right? You get 1 yes at the end, right? Like just fail. But I don't think you fail that much, but it's hard work for the mentee too, which is not a bad thing, right? So try it out, figure out, do DevOps this, right? Like it's about you also learning how to be a good student, and that takes practice. So, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, it doesn't work. Cool, try again.
So I think there's benefits for both the mentee and the mentor. The mentee obviously gets the guidance, the need, that feedback loop that Manos mentioned, but the mentor gets that validation as well. That feedback loop is important as well. And teaching someone, it's what makes you learn that something that you're teaching. The more you teach it, the better you understand it yourself. And at the end of the day, is that diversity of thought as well. When you have someone questioning you, how would I do this? Or why did you approach it like that? It makes you think, actually, would I approach it the same way now after 5-10 years of experience? So I've mentored few people over the last few years, and it's a massive benefit for me in my career. It made me realize how much I know, how much gaps I have. And actually, a lot of the discussions you have, you realize, okay, I've learned something new from this discussion myself. Not just I've shown something or teach something, I've learned something new. I've learned a new approach. And looking at back, how I approached it 5 years ago versus how I will approach it now, it's completely different. So that feedback is important for me as a mentor.
And the mentee wants to step it up a bit, because they know that their mentor has like a good reputation, they've got really good skills, they have a certain mindset. And it's like, okay, I need to step my game up and then level up, learn a couple more things. So when I go talk back to my mentor, I've got a good case. I know what I'm talking about, you know? Like when you talk to somebody that has a lot of experience, you want to come across like knowledgeable, you know what you're talking about. So you need to step up your game, and that helps you a lot with trying to dig a bit deeper, get a bit more research, ask a couple more people, and then be a bit better at your game. That's what I found.
Mario and James, what are the most rewarding moments when you mentored someone?
Early in the pandemic, I probably had one of my best moments in that, where I had someone who came to me asking for a bit of mentorship around breaking into cybersecurity. They are now a very senior security architect for a large company, very happy with what they're doing, which was important. But the most rewarding bit was they sent me a bottle of whiskey. It's not about the gift, it's about knowing that you made a difference for them. I didn't feel like I actually helped him that much at all. All I did was gave a few suggestions about things he could study, things he could look at, and ways he could get into the role that he wanted by going to conferences, doing the networking work. I made a few introductions. For me, that was very low effort. It cost me almost nothing. For him, it really helped him achieve something, and that was the rewarding bit, and the whiskey was nice.
Yeah, for me, it was similar. So I've helped a few people, not so much, again, what James was talking about previously, is trying to ask questions for people to figure it out. Particularly when, so I've never had a a mentor relationship with someone that was kind of starting in the security industry. It was always people that were already in the industry, but trying to figure out what do I want to do after this. So do I want to do similar job at a different place? Do I want to change to a different thing? And kind of help them navigate their own ideas, what they think they're good at, where they think would benefit them, where asking good questions and having that conversation, and then seeing that they actually make then the career moves and they're happy with what they're doing and keep on asking more questions, etc. Seeing kind of that evolution that I can see that I've had a small role in trying to help with that. It's immensely rewarding.
I'm going to stop right now and see if anyone's got any comments and questions so far.
Hi. One thing I like to say is, say if you want someone to mentor, write a list, and you need to figure out what you need help. Otherwise, you can't just ask them for help for each and everything. So you need to have a list, and you need to. It's going to create self-awareness as well, and then you figure out, okay, this is exactly what I need help from.
Good point. So, Manos.
Hi.
So how do you think mentoring, in which ways specifically, can fast track someone's career, whether we're talking about entry level or we're talking about already some higher management levels or even architects? Which way do you think?
So first of all, the most important thing is you get the experience that you don't have. You know, by talking to somebody who has the experience that you lack at a certain level of your career, like making the decisions that you need to make, they will help you see things in a way more mature that you're viewing them right now. And at the same time, the most important thing is they will help you draft a career path. This is what was important for my mentor and how we approached it. We've seen he has the experience he had the experience to guide me at that point in my career and say, okay, what would you like? What would you see yourself in the future? And you have a guess. Because you never know what you want to be in 10 years, but we at least have a good understanding of where you're going to be in 5 years. So I say, okay, I'd like to do this. What are the best way of approaching it? For me, I come from a network security background. So for me to start doing something more infosec was a bit of a lateral move first to start getting involved into more cloud security stuff and to more infrastructure stuff and getting the knowledge. So my mentor helped establish the connections. Because he was already involved with the InfoSec, he could manage the connections and set the path and the right opportunities for me to be able to do that move, which was quite pivotal for my career, and then get the rest of them of the advice that I would ask on how would I do it, what would I do, what's the next best move, okay, how would you approach this? All these questions and experience that you lack, you have somebody to help you with it, make you think about things, and also to vent. Did I say vent? I said it. Venting is quite important, yes. But yeah.
I had some similar experience. So my background is also on network security. And one of the things that, so when I was working for a big telco, one of the things that I ended up doing was I was deputy to the network security manager. One of the things that I helped them with was around business cases, etc. So working with them, one of the things that we ended up agreeing, and this is probably something that you'd probably want to have that conversation with your manager if you would think about doing something similar, was it was the only kind of formal mentorship relationship that I had, that I basically asked them, so what do you think of asking your peer, the person who was responsible for risk management, would you introduce and see if I can have an actual mentorship relationship with them? And that really, really helped me. For about a year, we were meeting once a month. I was coming with things, understanding more the risk side of things, how I could make better business cases and help my manager do the role. And that's what also kind of then led me into go more deeply into GRC, etc. That probably, I'm not sure it would have happened had I not had that that first inclination, a problem to solve, in seeing maybe that's a skill set that I don't have much at the moment that can add a lot of value to my own career, and then that opened new possibilities of what even my career in the direction that it took.
And I think the other important thing is we all require mentors, even a level. I've never had a mentor when I was a junior or a technical. The first mentor I ever got was at the CISO level. And that kind of changed my career trajectory as well, because I realized different things, different paths I have to could take, different type of CISO I can be. So for me, my first mentor was at a CISO level, and I have a lot to gain and has changed my career from here to the next step of my role. So don't feel like you're senior, you don't need one, or it's too late for you. It's never too late to change that.
And the other thing is that, look, it doesn't mean that the mentor is correct all the time, right? I had mentors where the best thing they gave me was to show me what not to do, right? And I think you have to make your own decision. Right? A mentor is just giving you advice, and sometimes it's interesting to learn and to see how somebody else is thinking and going, you know, actually that's not for me, or I don't agree with that, or you know, that's actually not that very good advice, which is cool, right? Like in a way, you know, it's you should filter that. Like it's not because somebody's a mentor that they are, you know, everything they say is correct. And you know, and I think it's up to the mentee, right, to make that filter, right? And it's your job to, in a way, you know, again, hack your way into the right mentorship, right? Find the right individual that has a better batting average. But there's also a lot to be said by talking to people that give you examples of what you don't want to do. And you go, well, that was great for you. I completely get it. I respect that. I can see why you want to go that direction, but that's not for me.
Yeah, you need to get something out of the mentorship, right? So it might be positive feedback, it might be negative feedback, it might be good examples, it might be bad examples. And the mentor's not there to do it for you.
Yeah.
So you used to use your critical thinking and say, okay, that approach worked for you, won't work for me, won't work for my scenario, and take the best parts of that and kind of formulate your own plan. The mentorship is there for that discussion, to hear that discussion going. And sometimes we don't have enough of those discussions and not at the true honest feedback level. And I think having a mentor that you are fully trust to have those conversations and you're not going to get offended if you disagree, it's another important thing as well. So right mentorship is important.
Actually, going back to your original point, one of my proudest moments is actually when the mentees don't call back again. Actually really cool, right? Because it means that they don't need anymore. It means you help them, they own their career, there's no more follow-up, and that's really cool, right? And then you see them progressing, and it makes you very proud. So again, it's not that it's a continuous relationship. There's going to be a sweet spot where you can help a lot. There's a sweet spot where you can learn a lot. Just that evolution is actually really great for both sides.
I quite like the approach, like, okay, you're my mentor, I don't want to be like you. Like it actually, we never think about it like that, you know? It's like you see people in your everyday working environment, you're like, man, I wouldn't like to behave like that. I wouldn't like to do that. And nobody considers them that they're actually, yes, they're kind of a mentor. They're like, it's like, yeah, avoid that, don't do it. Thanks.
Cool. So moving on, I'm going to ask a question to Marios. In your experience, what was one of your biggest challenges when mentoring? And what do you think generally anyone who mentors, what could be their biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge as a mentor has always been I get emotionally invested in the mentorship, and that doesn't scale. So there's two types of mentorship I consider. One is those questions that people ask you that I'm willing to answer async. And there's the mentorship that I actually get really emotionally invested in because I see that as a coaching, someone mentioned the coaching word, I see the both as coaching and mentorship joined together, and I get emotionally invested in that. So it's quite draining if you have 10, 20, 30 mentors like that, and it doesn't scale. So I would say if you're going to have those relationships, make sure that you handpick them and make sure that the personalities do match, because if your personalities don't match, those emotional discussions that you're going to have can offend people, can drain people, can be very emotional, daunting sometimes. And recently, over the last 3-4 years, I've seen a lot of comments on LinkedIn about people mentoring people and then expect to have jobs, and then they shame them on LinkedIn. For me, if you're going to have those sort of close relationships, you need to make sure that the personalities match. And I've been through one or two that were really hard on me because I get emotionally invested on those. On the other ones that you do the off sync, I'm in a lot of WhatsApp groups, I'm in a lot of Slack groups, on LinkedIn, anyone approaches me, those I will answer, and I would try to steer people in the right direction where I can, or give them the feedback I can. But I try to limit the actual emotional ones to 3 at the time. 3, no more.
The magic number.
But you do, as a mentor, I think when we talk about proudest moments is when you actually see the person that you mentored actually achieve something, even if it's the wrong direction what you told them, right? Because your advice, he did consider it, they did consider it, just said no. So the proudest moments I have is when I look at them succeed and think, okay, I contributed into that success in a good way or a bad way, regardless. Without me actually being open, they wouldn't have maybe had the opportunity to make that decision or take that approach. So, but I do get emotionally invested in mentorship, and I would just say, if you're going to be me, just make sure you have 3 maximum, and rotate them like API keys.
I was going to say, biggest challenge that I've seen with some people new to mentoring, and I had myself early on, you're not right. There are no right answers. You are discussing someone's career path. That is a personal path. Everyone has their own way. If they disagree with you, that's fine. And it's not that they hate you. It's not that they think you're wrong. You probably are, but it's not necessarily that they think it. I do a lot of teaching with a company called Caps Lock and various other places. And one of the things I keep on saying, to the point that it really annoys my learners, is there are no right answers. There are just ones that are less wrong than the others. And for each person, that will differ. So if you're mentoring, remember, you are not the expert on what that person's path will be. You've just got the experience that you've followed, and you can share that with them.
I would add to that, at least from personal experience, I haven't met anyone with more than kind of 15, 20 years of a career that can say that they haven't made a mistake in their career, right? Whether you're going to do it by yourself or someone else is going to make a suggestion that you may follow and it's not the mistakes are going to be there anyway, so just enjoy the ride.
I think going just to a thing, the biggest challenge I had is when, somebody asked for advice and I have no idea what to say. I was like, like, where do you go from there? And sometimes I can be guilty to sometimes, providing a view that's aligned to maybe how more I think. But I guess that also comes with the territory. Like, if you ask somebody opinion, you're going to get a biased view based on that person's view, right? But going back to the idea that, sometimes what you're telling people is what the wrong, is the thing of what not to do. I actually had that. I realized that I did a good thing because I showed them that they were not, that was not the right thing. I almost showed that what I just told you is not the right thing for you to do, because I clarified the concept. They were like, "Oh, that's not for me." I'm like, "Okay, good." So again, never take it personally, because your advice and sometimes what happens is that it's a long game of tennis, right? Or a long game of thing, right? Like, sometimes you give advice to somebody and, it takes them a year or 2 years to come around to it. And that's okay, right? Because we went on our own journey, we didn't believe stuff, it's good to have a good degree of civil disobedience, right? And sometimes you get given an advice and you ignore it, but it stays in the back of your mind, and then eventually you come back. And actually, that's a great way to come back to the person. Hey, that thing you told me, I get it now. Or, and that's really cool, right? So we got a question here from Andre, which is, when setting up, this is for the panel, right? When setting up phishing simulations, you write policies, procedures, basically you're already making decisions, right? Basically you are, in a way, is this already an interesting way to provide mentorship? Because those are already ways to teach, to provide reference, and I think for you, James, like, I think some of what I really like about your approach of doing incident response is that it's very fine line between mentorship and a playbook execution and actually running more, traditional incidents.
Yeah, I'd say if you're doing a playbook, if you're scripting out what someone should do, that is coaching. That's not mentorship. There's no scope to make your own mistakes. There's just follow the instructions. And that's useful. That's absolutely what you want in the middle of a crisis. And there are definitely times it's the right thing to do. But when you're talking about growing as a person and growing your career, you cannot afford to just take, well, that's the right answer because it's written down.
So very interesting question. So I'm not usually a person of yes or no, but yeah, I'm going to answer this one a bit differently. Absolutely not. In my opinion, I think that the equivalent of saying I'm going to teach you how to swim by putting you in the sea and leaving you there, right? It's not a good learning environment. I'm not sure I can add much more to it. I think it's not a good idea. Right? There's one thing. Obviously, in the context of work, we all open emails, we all have things, and it's important to understand what skills we could have to do all of that. But that's particularly if you're going to be the one clicking on something that gets your company in trouble because of phishing, that's already a very, very loaded emotional situation to deal with, right? Trying to think that you're going to do some kind of mentoring on top of something that is probably already to an extent traumatic, I think it's not a good strategy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, James, you also nailed it with saying like one of the challenges in mentoring is just learning how to let go. And, you know, you might be wrong or they might not listen to your advice, and that's totally fine. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next question, and that's for Mario. And you know, there will be situations when you work in cybersecurity and you progress and you know you go into management, become head of CISO, director, whatever, and you might have someone like that you're managing that you're also mentoring. So in your perspective, can that be a conflict of interest? What are the pros and what are the cons in this sort of unique situation?
Yeah, so I have been in that situation, and it's not very easy. The first one is the first challenge will be, will the person doing the mentoring be able to separate what it is that they need to what their objectives are as a manager from what the person in front of you is wanting to achieve, right? Because they may or may not be Venn diagrams, right? There may be some changes there. So when I've been in that situation in the past, and I appreciate this is probably not advice for anyone, but that's how I dealt with the situation, which I was very clear. Look, as your manager, this is what I should be telling you. As your mentor, I think there are these other things that you should consider, right? But that probably just works for me and not, but because by pointing in that direction, I was probably moving away from what I think I should be doing as a manager, because the objectives just didn't coincide. And there are situations that that may happen, right? And it's something that I've experienced, and it ends up being a bit hard on both. But I think there's always the potential for a conflict of interest. But I think that if you're going to put yourself in the position where you are going to have an actual mentorship relationship with someone that reports to you, you should make that decision in advance on how you're going to deal with those types of problems, right? What you don't want to do is getting into when you see that there's a conflict between what you think should be an advice to that person in front of you and what is your role as a manager to do in that particular situation. You don't want it to kind of be having to make that decision and end there. It's something that you should think in advance.
And I'll take it from the other point of view. As a mentee, you need to understand that those situations sometimes need to be clear and honest. If I'm giving you an advice as a mentor, it's an advice as a mentor. If I'm giving you advice as your manager, I'm giving you advice as a manager. And sometimes those two might conflict, but as the mentor, you need to be clear. This is what I'm saying to you as your manager, but this is what I'm saying to you as the guy that's mentoring you, because it's quite important to get both. And There's always conflict of interest in security. Every single left and right we look, and there's conflict of interest. But it's how you deal with that.
So I don't distinguish, to be honest. I think that my role is to be a mentor to my team, right? And I actually think, I was thinking about the scenario that you said, that if I feel that a professional advice will be different from mentee advice, that's already showed that something very wrong, either with what the person is doing or where they are. You don't want somebody on your team that you think they should be going left and you're making them go right, right? And so, I feel that part of my job is to provide mentorship to the team, is to guide them to particular directions. And, even whether sometimes they realize it or not, or whether it's officially or not, or, and I think I have to say, some of the best people I work with, they proactively want that. They proactively, pull that from me. And I think that's great, right? Because they get a lot more out of it. But I view that part of your job as a manager or a leader, more of a leader than a manager. I think I would just separate that a little bit. I think, there's management activities, which is about making sure everything is kind of, in a great alignment. But I think as a leader, you should be mentoring your team. You should be providing them guidance and nudging them in the right directions. Of course, that's your opinion, right? But again, that's why you're in that role.
I totally agree. Every single direct report I normally hire, I tell them I don't manage, I mentor.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, as a manager, you have to have that conversation that's a bit different than the mentor, and you need to be clear. But my goal is everyone that I hire that's going to report to me is that you actually mentor them, you guide them through the role, you don't micromanage them. And I think that's a clear distinction, right? You want people to feel open to ask advice, to ask you as a mentor, as the manager. I don't believe management actually is a good terminology, because we all should be leaders and we all should be mentors when we do that role.
See, and that's why when he poached Petra from my team, I was very happy, because she was going into a great place.
Thank you.
On that note, does anyone have questions from the audience, or comments, or experiences that they want to share, like if they were in similar situations mentoring someone? Yeah, I'm coming.
Thank you. Just a quick comment here. Sometimes we underestimate the importance of a mentor, especially when we are starting our career. The return of investment that we could get from a good mentor, even if we end to an unpaid internship, for example, would be massive compared to getting into a job by luck that unfortunately didn't give back to us the experience that we might need or the insight in the industry. And back to the question about new joiners into the business who are looking to get in or don't have experience, never stop challenging or think out of the box, reach out to people, find good mentors, and even, with an unpaid internship, believe me, you can get really, really good return of investment or your next really good paid job really, really fast.
That's a very good question, very good comment that we didn't really address when we were talking about, which is when you get the good relationship with a mentor, usually you get access to their social network as well, right? Which is something that that pays off, right? We know it pays off. Very good point.
You get hired, yeah?
Yeah, you get hired. Great way to get a job.
Hey, Mario. A lot of the mentorship discussions were more in the workplace. Can you talk about your mentorship outside of the workplace?
I mean, my mentorship is entirely outside the workplace because I'm independent. So all of it is informal, outside of any management relationship. There are definitely some companies who would not be happy with the advice I've given some of their employees. Most of them don't work for those companies anymore. But it is a very similar thing. It's just that you've not got that conflict of interest around being an employer as well. So you are able to prioritize first and foremost the person's own benefit and not potential impacts. There can be issues, particularly in some environments, where your advice as a mentor would conflict with your role within the company, such as saying, get out now, that place sounds absolutely horrendous. Now, at that point, if you're working for somewhere, you should be getting out yourself, but there can be issues. So there is a bit more freedom when it's outside of the workplace.
That's a really good question, man. To be honest, it just threw me back to memory lane. So the best mentorship I had was actually music. I was very privileged when I was in my rock band days, to have a teacher, which was actually the guitar teacher, but he mentored the band, so I was the drummer, right? And he had such an amazing guidance for us. Like it's all about you put the time in, it's all about commitment. You're professional. You don't play when you're drunk, right? And a great life experience is that he showed us also great examples. And I think in music I've learned so much. Like in a bar playing with musicians, the conversations, the lessons you learn by in a way outside of, I guess, professional work. I guess maybe I was professional playing, but I think those things are very important because they really they anchor you. So again, if you look back at other things that I do outside of work, there's some great values that you learn from those individuals. And it might not be, look, I worked for a food bank for a while during the pandemic. It was really rewarding, right, to understand that. It was really interesting to learn from the people that were setting it up, how it works, and from the people that work there. That was really good. And again, I think that's the experiences that make you who you are, right? And I feel that you get to learn. And I do feel that I do have a pattern that I go out of my way to try to learn from other people. Like I am the annoying one that asks the questions. I kind of go out when I find something that I think is quite interesting. I try to get a better understanding of why it is, right?
So I could add to that as well, because one of my mentors has been also my coach in my hobby. So I do free diving, so that means we dive on a breath hold, which is quite a mental sport, and it requires quite a lot of conditioning. So my mentor and my coach at that point is coach the same, because they were giving us program at the same time, is because they taught me the ethics of sports and how you approach a sport, and that sometimes just show up, and it's the same for work. Sometimes we're having some discussion with some of my friends. Just show up at work, not just show up in the sense that you come in and you come into the office or you log in, just show up, be there for your team, for everybody. And even if it's not your best of the day, something's going to happen. And then you're going to help somebody, something is going to help you, and you're going to find a solution to your problem. And that's honestly one of the best things that we got. And that's where sports help as well.
So not that I'm very good at it, but there are people that are worse at it. So I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So one of the things that we learn early on, particularly when people are just starting out, is really kind of being comfortable with another human trying to choke you. Takes a bit of getting used to. So particularly during those initial 6 months, kind of talking with people, trying to say, look, now this way I could have got your arm, try to put your hand like that so that doesn't happen, or instead of trying to choke me, that's not going to work, you need to do it something else. But those initial steps on helping someone to kind of not get murdered are really interesting.
And look, and that's why when I was saying that you want to see what people also do outside work is so important, because what they choose to do in their time is very, is critical. But of course, the best job is the one that you would do for free, but you get happy to be paid for, right? And I think that's the one you want to try to get. But the things that you learn, and I really like that word you said, the ethics of work. So you can imagine, like I was a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid playing in bars where we had the discipline to practice. We took it very seriously, right? And it's very interesting. You had an open bar, but we had a beer at the end of the night, right? So it was very interesting to learn the ethics. And I fell in love with the zone, which I eventually recognized in technology and coding, in music. But that was because we work our asses off, right? We work really hard to achieve that. And then there was that magic moments where everything aligned. right? And it was great. So, and I felt that ethic of work, that understanding I got from there, right? And mentorship, it's, why is Queen so hard to play than other bands? You've been mentored by these amazing, talented individuals because they are so tight, they're so good. And it was, even that you think, well, we've been mentored by Queen versus Metallica versus other bands, right? And you were, because you're learning from it, right? And our teacher was, the mentor I had, he was like, we would go, we want to learn Metallica. He was like, great, we have to learn Chuck Berry, right? So literally our portfolio was like from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way, of course, to all the metal stuff that we wanted to play. But it was a great school, right? It was great to learn that and to gain all that knowledge that was outside what probably your bubble was, right? And that was really, really great. So great question. Any other questions?
I just want to add, there might be people out there who maybe find, especially entry level, who find it daunting to reach out and ask questions and to find a mentor because, people are sometimes afraid of asking the wrong questions. What would you say to these people? This is for all the panelists.
You're going to say what is that in the first words?
There are no wrong questions. There are just wrong answers. That really is it. There are no stupid questions. I know it's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. There are only stupid answers to those questions. So don't be afraid of asking. No one's going to get offended if you ask something that they dealt with 10 years ago and seemed really simple. They will hopefully look back at what they did then and reconsider it and think, okay, we had this earlier. Look at why they made that decision, re-examine it, and provide that. But no one is going to be upset because your question seems too simple or seems like it's coming from a place where you've not got 20 years of experience. Everyone's well aware, if you're going into a mentorship relationship, that you are looking for advice, you are looking for that experience, and you wouldn't be doing that if you already had all of the answers.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing I would say, like, what you don't want to do is ask the same question twice, right? That I would say is probably the wrong question. If you ask the same question twice, it means you're not learning, right? But in a way, the simpler, or not the simpler, right? Every question, if the person asks, is because they don't understand it, and that's valid. We all had it. We have that even today. Like, our industry is so full of jargon that people sometimes say things and go like, "What the hell was that?" Right? So you have to have that discipline to ask the questions. And one of the best individuals that I mentored, she got into the team because, we kind of, I think she applied for a mentorship and we said, hey, pop in. And she took a week off work and she did an internship with us. And then by the time the internship finished, we gave her the job. And that was very interesting, right? Because you think about it, like she said, hey, I would like to learn some stuff. And we says, cool, look, we'll give you an internship for a week. And she took a week of holiday, came in, we liked her so much that we gave her a job, right? But she did something which I always thought very cool. She asked tons of questions. And what was very interesting is, in the beginning, you could say that some of the questions were a bit, was relatively obvious for who was in the room. But even then, it was okay because, you shouldn't expect everybody in that room understands that. But then you could see almost her questions getting better and better and better and better because she got into the habit of every time she didn't understand something, she asked a question. And that's cool, right? Like we're guilty of actually, skipping over that. But, I agree with that. There's no wrong questions, just wrong answers.
It's really funny because I might come across confident, but a year and a half ago, I was very, very timid to do these sessions because I was afraid not to ask the wrong question, but to say the wrong things, give the wrong answers. And then talking about mentorship, my mentor started working with me and said to me, look, someone in the audience wants to hear what you have to say because they've been you 10 years before. So that gave me a little bit of a courage to start doing these talks. Dinis and Petra obviously pushed me a little bit to appear in this, but it puts me out of my comfort zone. And what I say to people that are afraid to ask questions, start listening to these events and build a little bit of courage and confidence. You need that in life, not just in your work, and especially in security. You need to have a little bit of courage and build up to it. I'm a person that a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you wouldn't see me here. I'd be in the shadows. Not because I couldn't do it, just because I didn't have the confidence to do it. And now I'm here and I'm throwing confidence out there. People will think I'm really, really confident, but in reality, I'm not. But I know that I have to say something and someone will benefit from it. Not everyone in this room might have a benefit from what I'm saying, but even if one person in this room can benefit from what I'm saying and they can teach it to another person, then there's a massive benefit for the community. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
I also want to add, in terms of questions, what will make your question super powerful if you have the time, if you're not on the spot, is actually research the question yourself and then come to someone and say, okay, well, I've read about these 3 types of approaches. What's your approach? What do you think? Because if you just come and blatantly ask a question that you could have researched that in 3 minutes, then that shows a little bit of lack of proactivity. So if you obviously, if you're on the spot, that's a different situation. But if you have the time, you research that question yourself and then come back to your mentor and say, okay, well, you know, what's your take on this? That makes the learning curve so much more powerful for yourself, but also for the mentor, because the mentor might have not heard of all these 3 approaches. So that makes it a 2-way conversation.
And if you're on the receiving end of that question, what you do is you go to this website, which is called, can you Google that for me? Right? And you send them a link with that. And that basically opens a web page that opens Google, moves the mouse to Google, types literally what you just asked, press play, and then you see the answer. Right? So absolutely, right? Do a bit of homework, right? So, you know, we sometimes used to do that a bit, like be passive aggressive, right? Somebody asked the question. It's a bit like, to be fair, you know, going to another level, it's a little bit disrespectful, right? Like if you haven't even freaking Google that, right? You know, do it. We actually had another one, which is the next level of that, which is, can you ask the wall, right? But to be honest, there's science on this, right? So if you ask a question and if you say, can you ask the wall before you ask again, the fact that you go and walk into the wall, by the time you get there, literally 50% of the time you get a good answer. So again, right? Like, you know, and what it means that if it's like a bank account, right, of credibility, right? If you ask those questions that you should have asked Google or the wall first, you're not gonna get time. I guarantee your message will start to be ignored, right? Because people just don't have the time to do it. If you ask good questions, like Petra was saying, or show a bit of research, even if the research is wrong, even if they're completely off base, that shows commitment, that shows interest. In fact, that means you already eliminated a number of options. Then you can go, oh, look here, right? So that is super critical, right, to do that. And then nothing wrong with creating a couple little, and I quite like presentations, some people hate it, but I like as a great way to communicate, right? You want a great way to ask a question? Create a slide with a question. Put the thing, put information, show your research, show what you've done. The more you can do that, the easier it is for somebody to help you. And the point of the person with experience is they know, okay, look, you really need to look here, or you need to look there. And more importantly, if you actually teach something to your mentor, that is awesome. And don't underestimate the fact that you might actually sometimes do more research than that individual because you might have more time, right? It doesn't mean that he doesn't have the guidance or the ability to then go, oh, what about this? But, you know, it's very important to research the question. Absolutely. Or else you get can you Google that for me?
Anyone has any questions or comments from the audience?
Thanks. I'm going to take this slightly back to the previous session as well as related. So we talked about the lack of not just talent, but diverse talent in our industry and how we encourage that. But beyond that, when we do have a diverse talent pool, how do we promote them in the right way at the same pace as we do? So I think a big part of that is having, Dina mentioned about having role models, but also having mentors and people to help guide. So what I'm interested to know from either you directly, what you're proactively doing or what you've seen others do successfully to promote mentoring opportunities for, you know, underrepresented groups in the industry, whether it's to help people getting into cyber or actually moving through their career.
During this session.
In my previous work, we started only for females because there was normally females in cybersecurity. So we started this thing called sending the elevator down. So whoever who's on the top, send the elevator down and mentor the female up so they feel comfortable. It's a whole process. So then we started with other neurodiversity as well. So it's something that perhaps helps.
I like the idea.
I guess, well, that's a tough question. I guess, look, I think what I would say is I personally don't distinguish, right? I try to help everybody that I can in a realistic way. I think, I guess I haven't been maybe on organizations where it have that level of size or that level of formality. I see value. I think there's value to create safe spaces. To be honest, I think the summit helps. And I think that's maybe my way of doing that. I know of a lot of great success stories of diversity of people who are included. And I think the summit does a good job, right? At promoting that environment where, people feel safe, they create sessions. And the 5-day summit, well, it's amazing. You want to think that it's this for a whole week, right? And then it's also this starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, finishing at 10 o'clock at night. And you end up having these great clusters of individuals that also want that. So I do remember actually the women, creating groups within one of the summits where they actually were talking to each other, they were mentoring each other. They said, look, there's a safe space for them to talk about. I think there was a villa, right? That everybody would crash in and then do stuff in there. And that's great, right? I think that works. And I think it's important that you do those kind of things.
So for me, I'm an advocate of diversity in general. I'm a neurodiverse person, and I would love to have more neurodiverse people in all industries. I think addressing diversity is, like I said before, is a really complex thing that we all trying to contribute to. I will actually put back to the audience, talks like this really help, right? Please share this content on your LinkedIn page, give it coverage. We are trying to do the same thing from our side. We are sharing this content online. I'm here, like I mentioned, I'm not comfortable being on the stage. I'm having this experience to be able to help others. If we share this content, if we invite more people to these sessions, we have a broader, diverse attendees, then we address the issue. But it's a very complex issue, and I think it starts by actually awareness. I'm a true advocate for diversity. Being neurodiverse comes with its own challenges, and I believe that we need to start putting awareness out there, sharing this content. Make sure the person who asked the question to share this content out after this call.
So I have a different type of background because I'm mixed race. So I'm one of those few people that I grew up with white people treating me like I'm black and black people treating me like I'm white, right? So I have a bit of experience with that. I think it starts with hiring, right? On how you build the teams that are under you. And then obviously that leads to hopefully not generational, but it leads to effects down the line. I think that generally in Europe, we're not doing enough, in the UK in particular. There are initiatives that are happening now in the United States, for instance, a company called Cyverse, that they are kind of the big companies like the Walmarts and the Amazons, etc. They are opening cybersecurity centers close to communities where there are underrepresented people, and they are trying to build that talent from within and supporting them in their local communities. That's something that I would like to see more of here in the UK, in other places, because I think anything that we can do will always be insufficient if we're just looking at our own things. I have a slight advantage because I don't know why, but people that tend to reach out to me and ask for my opinion tend to be non-white. I don't know why, but that tends to happen. So I can, for me, that's almost a given in about 90% of the people that I end up having any type of mentoring relationship with. But it's not enough, and I don't think that as an industry that we're not doing enough for sure.
Cool. Anyone else got any other comments, questions? That's great. So we can finish this talk on that note. If any one of the panelists has anything else to add to conclude. All right. Thank you very much. And we have 2 more talks, and now we have a little longer break. Cheers.